I am Lisa Kramer. I am RISD's Fulbright Program Advisor. And tonight we have with us, we have Yingbani Tsai, who is here with us tonight. And she received her RISD BFA in Apparel Design along with a Brown BA in Economics and East Asian Studies and a Fulbright to South Korea. Hi, Ying.
Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you.
And we have tonight Ashton Agomenu, who received his RISD BFA in Film, Animation, and Video in 2014, and a Fulbright to Bennett. Hi, Ashton.
Hey, everybody. Nice to meet you. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And we also have Alan Tracy with us, our RISD Career Center Communications and Programs Manager. He will help us pull the strings tonight and facilitate the Q&A. Hi, Alan. And I know you have a couple of things you want to go over.
Yeah. Well, welcome, everybody. Thanks for making time. We're in for a great evening tonight, so super exciting stories to hear about, and some process from Lisa. But before we get started, I just wanted to share some of the our guidelines for interaction. Basically, if you wish to reach us, and we encourage questions the whole time, we'll probably manage most of the questions at the end of the program. But please ask throughout, just so as questions come up, send them in through the Q&A. The chat box is actually turned off to attendees. That's more for outgoing. We'll share links throughout, and especially at the end, I've got a few links that we'll share that'll get you resources that Lisa refers to in her talk. So there will be a record of this. There'll be a recording of this. The chat and everything, there is a public record of that. I just want to notify everybody of that. Please be respectful in all interactions and questions. And lastly, we have provided a closed caption option. So if you wish to use closed caption, the control bar, your Zoom control bar at the bottom, you can just click closed caption, start subtitles. And if you wish to have that assistance, it's there for you. With all that business behind us, I'm going to just ask a couple of quick questions with one poll, if you all don't mind chiming in. I'm going to launch this, and the panelists will be able to see it as well. So we're just wondering who's in the room. It helps us, just imagine, being in that space with y'all. And a couple of questions about your year in school. Have you considered a Fulbright? So if you don't mind chiming in that way, we'd be grateful. Thanks, everybody. Almost everybody's answered there. I'm gonna let it roll for another second. Okay, great. And I'll share the results so everybody can see what's happening. And if Lisa, if that helps you out some.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
great.
So please, thanks everybody again for being here, and enjoy the talk. And thanks, Lisa, for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen. So I'm going to start by playing a video tutorial on all things Fulbright. I have recorded this in advance so we can just streamline all the information and you have all the core information on Fulbright in one place. So during this video, again, as Ellen said, feel free to make note of your questions. You can type them into the Q&A. And then after the video, we're going to hear from Ashton and Ying about their experience, and then we'll just have an open, casual Q&A discussion. So we hope you do stick around. There's a lot of learning that happens at the end when you're hearing your peers' questions. So let's go to the video. So I am going to share my screen with the video now. And then I'll hit play, and then Ashton, Ying, and Alan, you can mute and turn your videos off, and they'll just watch the video for now. All right, here we go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Lisa Kramer. I'm RISD's Fulbright Program Advisor, or FPA. I want to start by recognizing that you are all at various stages considering Fulbright. Fulbright is a process. If you are intending to apply this year, great. Now is the time to get serious about this and consider that you will need to set some time aside for Fulbright from now through September. If you are interested in next year or the year after, also great. It is never too early to start thinking about a Fulbright grant. Some can pull this off in 5 to 6 months, but many take 1 to 2 years to develop their proposal. In any case, you are here now and will learn a great deal no matter how far you go in the Fulbright exploration. Let's see, so a little bit about me. I'm not an artist. I always start my presentation that way, which I know is a little odd at RISD, and it's a little bit of a stretch, but my not being a formally trained artist may be a benefit to you. You are surrounded by talented artists. I'm another voice. I work to help you look at your proposals and applications in a different way, which can be particularly helpful when you're applying for a grant like Fulbright that is not solely art or design focused, and you have to make your case to a variety of audiences, to a well-educated, non-art specific audience. What I do have is a lot of grant writing experience. I've spent my professional career in international programs and grant management. I've written a lot of grants, from everything from bathroom renovations to refugee resettlement to arts education programs. I'm here to help you pull all the pieces together into a compelling proposal, no matter your discipline or project content. So about Fulbright. The goal is to increase mutual understanding between the people of the U.S. and people of other countries through exchange. It was created by Congress in 1946 to promote international goodwill through the exchange of students in the fields of education, culture, and science. It is funded through U.S. Congress. It is administered in the U.S. by the International Institute of Education, IIE. This is a government grant, which you should keep in mind as you consider your audience. It is also very important that you always keep in mind that Fulbright, at heart, is about meaningful cross-cultural exchange. This grant is open to graduating seniors. You may begin the application process in your junior year, but you won't be able to submit an application until the fall of your senior year. Graduate students and recent graduates know that you can apply through RISD up to 3 years after graduation. You must be a U.S. citizen by the application deadline, have a bachelor's degree by the start of the grant, be proficient in the language of the host country, have limited experience in the host country, plus there are country-specific requirements you will need to familiarize yourself with. Know that diversity and inclusion are cornerstone principles of Fulbright. Fulbright's goal is to have a program that represents the diversity that makes up the U.S. There are 2 main grants. The Study Research Grant, which is independent research study or arts projects abroad for 8 to 10 months, offered in 140 countries. English teaching assistantships are an opportunity for you to help teach English and U.S. culture in a classroom for 8 to 10 months, offered in 75 countries. I'm going to focus on study research grants, as that is what most RISD students are interested in. But know that we are happy to help you with an ETA application too. Keep in mind, though, that the ETA opportunity does come with some expectations that you have experience in teaching, experience in working with non-native English speakers, specific teaching ideas and methods, and can make clear connections as to why teaching English will support your long-term goals. So a little more on the Study Research Grant in the creative arts. You will need a well-developed project and or study plan that, in Fulbright's words, improves your craft, which means art and design making needs to be central in the study, research, and outcomes. You will need to develop and document a host country affiliation relationship. This might be with university, research think tank, lab, library, community organization, or nonprofit, in which you receive mentorship and critique, maybe access to facilities or equipment. Perhaps you are taking a class or a workshop. Plus, you could be supporting their research or class or assisting in a production or conference. You will need a compelling visual portfolio that supports the grant activities. Consider that your portfolio will be reviewed by U.S. designers and artists and host country experts who are likely not all artists and designers. You will need to include meaningful host country community engagement and have a high level of academic, professional, and artistic achievement, and demonstrated leadership, flexibility, adaptability, and openness. There's an additional program called the Fulbright National Geographic Storytelling Fellowship. This is really exciting, but it is a little tricky. It is supplemental to the Study Research Grant. Supplemental meaning only if you receive the Study Research Grant will you be considered for the National Geographic Storytelling Fellowship, which means your study research project must be first and foremost. Your National Geographic proposed project cannot detract from your study research project. Your study research project must stand alone with the National Geographic Storytelling Fellowship project as a possible enhancement. If you are interested in adding this to your Fulbright application, you will include additional application components: a storytelling project proposal, a storytelling portfolio, and a storytelling portfolio narrative. While applicants of all disciplines are welcome, know that they are looking for academic storytellers who can tell research-based stories. You have to have demonstrated experience in storytelling, and it is incredibly competitive. If you're seriously interested and it makes sense for you and your work, you will need to carefully review all the details of this program. What are the award benefits? Round-trip airfare, a monthly stipend, accident and sickness benefits, and other possible benefits depending on the host country. Once you return from a Fulbright experience, you will have gained new skills, perspectives, and insights that will influence you for the rest of your life, along with Fulbright being a great network builder and resume builder. One of the most common questions about benefits is, can I defer my loans while I'm on a Fulbright grant for a year? And know that the answer is yes. What does a Fulbright project look like? It is so hard to define. There are so many variables, from your skills and interests to your affiliates' areas of expertise. And there are 140 countries, each with their own interests and requirements. The possibilities are endless, but there are basically 3 broad types with lots of gray area in between. Independent study research is the traditional Fulbright award in which you design a project from beginning to end that allows you to work with people of the host country to mutually advance in your field of interest. Some countries offer graduate enrollment as an option. In this case, the program, activities, and outcomes are set. It's graduate study. However, this can be tricky as you have to make a strong case for this isn't just about funding for graduate study. Why is this a Fulbright? What is the meaningful cross-cultural exchange? Why this country? How is this something you can't do in the U.S.? It is important that you make a case for how your exploration goes beyond the institution of graduate study. And for most countries, you also have to be accepted to the university program, usually in a separate process. This is what most RISD Fulbrighters do, hybrids. Most have some connection to a university, academy, or institution in which there is some structured class or workshop learning, plus some sort of independent mission, burning, learning, question, exploration. Usually to do this effectively, RISD applicants have secondary affiliates which get them out into the community, exploring, practicing, and applying their skills and learning. Let's move on to the Fulbright Resources. The Fulbright website is extensive. Everything you need is there. But because there's so much to navigate, I'm going to give you a tour and highlight the important pages for you to review. First, be sure you're on the Fulbright U.S. Student Program website, not the Fulbright Scholars website or a host country's Fulbright website. Make sure it says U.S. Student at the top. Probably the most exciting pages are the country information and requirements found here by region. For example, let's look at Romania. Here you'll find the grant period, if they have anything in particular they are looking for in candidates, such as disciplines, area focus, or degree levels. Of course, you want to check out the language requirement right away. Any restrictions or preferences on affiliation type will be listed here. And you may also find a link to the host country website or an email to an actual human. Process information is found under the Applicants tab, Application Components. Choose the grant, Creative and Performing Arts. Here you'll find each application component, with drop-downs that include considerable details on instructions and tips. Visual material requirements can be found under Supplemental Materials. The visual materials are not supplementary. They are required and very important. Click on the link to required materials. You get to a list of the Fulbright disciplines with drop-downs to the requirements for each. You will have to choose a discipline. There is no multidiscipline option. It's not that you can't have a multidisciplinary practice or project, but because there are so many applicants, they have to put you in categories. So you will have to choose what best fits your project and consider your audience. Fulbright offers webinars April through October. Under the Applicants tab, under Information Sessions, you will find webinars for applicants. These are 1-hour sessions in which you will hear from Fulbright experts and hear questions from your peers around the country. It is important that you listen to at least a couple of these. I listen to at least 20 every year and learn a little something new each time. It is also important that you hear from Fulbright directly to confirm what I'm telling you and to provide you with new perspectives. If you see one you're really interested in but miss it, make note. Then go to Recorded Webinars to listen in. You will also find webinars from the previous years here. I am often an applicant's first go-to, but know that Fulbright program officers who work for IIE are there to help too. Sometimes I don't know the country-specific answer. There are 140 countries. so it will be best for you to email or call the program officers directly. Their contact information can be found by going to Contacts in tiny white font at the bottom of the page. In tiny white font at the top right, you will find a link to a page of interesting statistics. You will find applications and awards for each country. I did the math here, and in 2020-2021, 35.7% study research projects were awarded in the Czech Republic and 20% in Denmark. By no means should statistics solely guide your choice. If you are passionate about a country and your project is a great fit for that country, don't look at the statistics. But if you are open, the statistics may help you make a decision. You may want to poke around in the statistics and consider a less competitive country. Obviously, English-speaking countries are the most competitive. The UK is by far the most competitive. If you speak another language, consider how that might be an advantage. And if you speak French, maybe instead of France, which is quite competitive, consider Benin, Morocco, or Burkina Faso. If you don't speak another language, consider a country like Latvia or Norway with no language requirement, or Laos or Malaysia that have a more flexible language requirement. Learning some of the language is still important to these countries, but because their language is not commonly taught in the US, they are more flexible. Also in statistics, you will find a link to the top producing institutions. RISD students and alumni do very well in this competition, and RISD is a top producing school in the specialized institution category, with 89 awardees who have explored their creative projects in 43 different countries. Also in tiny white font on the top right is a grantee directory with Fulbright alumni across the country in all disciplines. I did a search on sculpture and India, which resulted in 12 Fulbrighters. There's not a lot of information on each Fulbrighter here, but the directory may give you some project idea leads or help you determine the country's interest, and maybe even lead you to someone to contact. Fulbrighters are often happy to talk to applicants about their experience. But when looking for Fulbright artists for inspiration or support, I suggest you start at RISD's Career Center website. Scroll down to learn more about Fulbright, and then to the RISD Fulbright Showcase. You will get to a site of RISD Fulbrighters. Over 35 are on the site. In stories, you can read about their projects, and you can connect with them through their website or see what they are up to on their Instagram. In the Experience Gallery, you can see some great photos of their lives and the people they worked with while on their Fulbright grant. In the Artwork Gallery, you can see both what they submitted to receive the grant and the results of their projects. This website is a great place to go for inspiration and make connections. But for the nitty-gritty, how does this actually happen for RISD students? Go back to the Fulbright section of the RISD Career Center website. There are two very important documents to guide your process: the checklist and deadlines, and getting started. First, though, consider, will you be applying through RISD? If enrolled or an alum who graduated in the past 3 years, you have the option to apply through RISD. But you are welcome to apply on your own, which Fulbright calls at large, and it is not seen as a disadvantage by Fulbright in any way. Know that the pro to applying through RISD is you will receive intensive support throughout the process. But the con may be you must follow RISD's internal deadlines. We require you first submit to RISD in mid-August in order to receive feedback and have time for fine-tuning. Fulbright's national deadline is early October. Our internal deadlines are in place so we can effectively, efficiently, and fairly support all of you through the process, but they are also in place for your benefit. We know from past experience that applicants who start late really struggle and then decide to wait until next year, which is fine. Lots of applicants have false starts and come back stronger the next year. This is RISD's checklist and deadlines. This is the first page of this document, a visual look at the deadlines. In blue is the recommended timeline for each stage. In green are the required deadlines. This document goes on to provide additional milestones for each application component. This document will help guide your process. Be sure to check out this document on the website for exact dates, but know that the first deadline is the Kickstart meeting in mid to late May, where you confirm your intent and country choice, and we ensure you are ready to go. The second deadline is your first draft, due early June. And the first submit, if you are applying through RISD, is mid-August. Keep in mind, summer can be very challenging. Consider that many countries have a culture of long holidays in the summer, and holiday means a real break. You may find that affiliate contacts are not available, particularly mid-July to early September. And we strongly encourage you to submit documents before the deadlines. This will provide you with earlier reviews, meaning more time to redraft, incorporate feedback, fine-tune, and move on to your next draft or another application component. The second important document is the RISD Getting Started. This is the index page. The first thing you will notice is that it is really long. Keep in mind, Brown's Fulbright Manual is 30 pages long. Consider that this is a condensed version of the Fulbright website, webinars, and our experience working with applicants over the years. It has everything for RISD artists and designers in one place. This is your resource. Take the time to read it over once and then use it as a reference throughout the process. The RISD Getting Started document walks you through each application component with detailed advice, plus it has valuable information on how to work with me, what makes you a strong candidate, what makes a competitive proposal. So what are the components? Affiliation. Applicants must find and arrange their affiliations. Countries have specific requirements, but it is usually with a university, nonprofit, or research think tank. It cannot be with a for-profit company. Applicants must build the relationship and then document the nature of the relationship in a letter. Yes, this can be hard and take time, so start early. Just do it. Don't wait for the perfect draft or perfect project idea. Who your affiliate is, what they can offer, what they would like in return will affect your project ideas and proposal. You want to work with your affiliate to develop your project. There are tips in the RISD Getting Started document to help your search and develop your affiliation. We also have an email outreach template and actual affiliate letters we can review with you during advising appointments. Statement of Grant Purpose. This is a 2-page proposal outlining all the details and purpose of your project. There are a number of tools to get you started on project development and writing. In the RISD Getting Started document under the application component Statement of Grant Purpose, you can find these prompts to ensure you are hitting key content. This is, in a sense, a way to interview yourself. You can use these prompts as headers to help you focus, and then as your draft develops, you will delete. In fact, I often use them as a checklist when I review your first draft. Do consider that less is more. The purpose statement needs to be clear and straightforward plan. You need a focused, unique direction to get busy reviewers on board. Personal statement. You have 1 page to talk about your path. How did you get to this point of applying for a Fulbright? This is where you can be more creative and show some personality. It could be anything, really. It is an introduction to you. Obviously, nothing too personal. Remember, this is a government grant, and it should be directly related to your project. Think of this as a 3rd page in connection to your purpose statement. This is a great place for critical reflection. Fulbright loves critical reflection and seeing that you have an awareness of your arc of growth. What did you try, learn, then realize, and how did that change your perspective, lead you to new questions and next steps? This is also a place for examples and stories rather than listing like a resume. Deep reflection of one story in your path is better than a list. For both the purpose and personal statement, consider in the Getting Started document the section on what makes a competitive proposal. Each of these green bullets, you will find a detailed description of what Fulbright is looking for. Read this now at the beginning and keep referring back to it as you develop your proposal. In addition, continue asking yourself the 2 big important questions. First, why this country? Beyond the institution you'll be working with, if you picked up this project for Singapore and moved it to Japan, is it the same thing? How is it unique to Singapore? Second, how will this experience improve your craft? Beyond inspiration or a new place to practice, what skills are you gaining to specifically improve your craft in this country? Language forms. Depending on the country, a language self-evaluation and a professional evaluation may be required or recommended. 3 recommendation letters are required. Choose wisely in terms of who will write a meaningful letter and who will be timely. At the application stage, unofficial transcripts are required, so you will need to collect these documents, scan them neatly, and upload them into the application. The online application is really long and includes 5 to 6 additional essays. Start this early. This is not a last-minute thing, and be neat and consistent in both content and in formatting. You want to have a strong application package from beginning to end. And finally, visual material. I have this last, not because it isn't important. It is extremely important, but you are the experts on this. You know how to do this well. I won't get into a lot of detail in this tutorial, but consider a few critically important tips. Connect your images to your grant project. Curate the order thoughtfully. Consider your audience carefully. Your reviewers are not only artists. Take advantage of the image descriptions. Tell your reviewers, especially your non-art reviewers, more about your process and ways of thinking. I highly recommend you check out the Fulbright Arts Portfolio webinar found on Fulbright's recorded webinars page. The final weeks can be fairly intense, so I'm going to walk you through the submission steps. If you are applying through RISD, you submit the complete application through the Fulbright online system by mid-August. But I see it first. Fulbright is not looking at it at this point. I arrange your Fulbright RISD interview. And don't worry, the interview is more fun than it is scary, and it can be really helpful. Know that RISD is not a gatekeeper. We submit all applications. The interview's purpose is to ensure that you are prepared to carry out your proposed project and provide an opportunity for you to receive additional feedback. After your interview, I unsubmit your application and you have a last chance for fine-tuning. This is the time for minor changes, not rewriting. Redeveloping after months of work doesn't usually work out well. This is the time to make careful, select changes to strengthen. Then you resubmit. Again, your submission goes to RISD, to me, for a quick review to catch errors. Then I hit my submit button to Fulbright and it is done. Art applications are first reviewed by U.S. experts by discipline, and semifinalist decisions are announced in January. Semifinalist applications then go to the host countries for review. And then host countries make their decisions. Both governments approve, and finalists are announced anytime between February and May, usually in March or April. I've given you a lot of information and resources here, but how do you get started? Grant writing is just as much about organization skills as it is project development. Develop organizational tools based on your style to keep track of your research, drafts, and affiliation outreach, and set personal milestones to help you meet the deadlines. Review the country summary pages, which is really exciting, and it is important to find out early on if there are restrictions, preferences, or special requirements. Start drafting your purpose and personal statements early. The first draft, the commitment in writing, and the feedback you receive, this is when things really take off. Find help. Ask for help. This is a complicated grant. Find people who will support your application process. Meet with me, but not only me. I'm only one voice in the process. Find someone in your discipline to guide your research and content. Find someone to give you feedback on your image choices. Get a professor on board before the end of the semester. Maybe you can send them a draft or two over the summer. Reach out to the RISD Center for Arts and Language. They are an excellent resource for brainstorming or fine-tuning your proposal. Talk to RISD Global about where RISD might have connections to your host country. A word of advice on getting help. Get advice early on in the process rather than so much at the end. At this stage, at the beginning, all voices are important. At the end, your voice is important. Last-minute advice is dangerous as it can really throw you off. Everyone will see something different. Well-intentioned advice can send you down a rabbit hole after months of hard work, and it is really hard to recover from that. And one more resource for you. On the RISD Fulbright page, scroll down to Tips from a RISD Fulbrighter. Click on Learn More, and you will go to a document full of excellent insight and tips from RISD Fulbrighter to Brazil, Gail Foreman. I want to leave you with a reminder of the first deadlines. Schedule your Kickstart meeting to take place mid to late August. By mid to late August. Earlier is great too. You can make an appointment with me on the Career Center website. At some point, depending on the applicant pool, I am only open for appointments with those applying this year. But RISD Career Center advisors, Jason and Scott, will continue taking appointments for those interested in Fulbright, no matter what stage you are in the process. First drafts are due early June. This is a draft, and there'll be many more, but it should be a serious, thoughtful draft, not an outline, not bullets, and in the correct format and page numbers, proofed for typos and grammar errors. You don't have to have all the answers for the first draft. Start pretending and imagining. The more thoughtful your drafts are, the deeper I can go in my review to provide feedback that will help you take it to the next level. Be sure to check the checklist and deadlines on the RISD Fulbright webpage for the exact dates of these deadlines. And finally, I want to emphasize what an amazing experience Fulbright is. Even the application process itself is a valuable experience, from the research to developing relationships overseas to writing to submitting. A Fulbright proposal is a lot of work, maybe the most intense proposal you will ever write. After a Fulbright application, other grants will seem easy. And know that it will not be a waste of time. I look forward to working with you. Thank you, everyone, and be safe.
All right. We are back live, and I will stop sharing my screen so you can see us all. Just a few really quick updates. First, some quick news. We have really exciting news. We have 10 RISD semifinalists right now. So they submitted in the fall, they were successful in the first round of review, and now are waiting for their final decision. So really exciting. Second, quick update is that the Fulbright cycle is scheduled to open for the new year, March 31st. So at this point, all the country pages will be updated, and so you can go and look and see if there's any changes. And it sounds like they're going to have a new website. So everyone, including me, is going to have to sit down and really look at that new website. I'm not sure if it's just going to be design changes or navigation, but in April, we'll all have to kind of get used to the new website. And the third thing I just wanted to mention is that we do have the tentative deadlines up for the upcoming year. And so as of today, March 3rd, I mean, these are tentative, things can change, but likely not a lot. So the first deadline is going to be May 28th. And I just heard myself in the video say August instead of May, and I do not know why I said that. But the first deadline, the Kickstart meeting, is in May. And so right now it's May 28th. And then the first drafts are going to be due June 8th. So again, do check back in April when everything is open to see if there's any changes. So I'm going to now turn this over to Ashton, and let's hear a little bit about your experience.
All right, thank you. That was a really great video, by the way. I'm sure you answered a lot of their questions. Yeah, and I just remember having the same questions, and you just touched on everything perfectly. So my experience in Benin was pretty great. I'll tell you a little bit about my, I guess, plight there. I was a film and video major at the High School of Art and Design. I'm sorry, at Rhode Island School of Design, and before that, I was a painter in the Arts High School in New York. My parents immigrated to New York in around 1992, which is around the same time that I was born, and they immigrated from Benin, West Africa. But I'd only been there for maybe like a couple of months growing up. Actually, maybe 1 or 2 years, but I was like 2 or 3. I didn't really remember anything. And I spent most of my time as a young kid in New York. I spoke French at home, and all that I got of Beninese culture was from my parents. And so my mission with this Fulbright was to be able to take my creative skills and research a little bit more about Dahomey history, which is what Benin was before it got colonized. So doing, to be frank, I wanted to do history paintings on the Dahomey people. And so I reached out to, because I see a question in the chat about how to get in touch with affiliates. I reached out to a university there, several universities actually, because I really had no clue who to reach out to, even though my parents were from there. They helped me like reach out to a few people that just ended up being dead ends, but I just did some cold research, found universities out there, proposed to them what my project was, and one university which is familiar with the Fulbright program was interested in the project, and they reached out to me and they helped me sort of secure the affiliation aspect of the application. And after, by the way, I also was I forgot what you call it, but somebody who starts the application and then doesn't do it, but then comes back and do, what did you call that again?
Yeah, I think a couple times you started, right? And then you reapplied. No, did you? Yeah, you.
Twice. Okay, so I
Yeah,
showed.
Ying had applied twice, but you started
No,
a couple times, right?
No,
False start. Yes.
I'll start. I showed interest while I was in school, but never followed through with it. Then I started maybe like in 2014, right after I graduated. That flopped as well, but then the third time around, it landed. So after the third time around, Lisa really just did a great job in terms of like helping me figure out what I needed to do to get the right things together for my proposal. And I also had more experience doing a lot of what I proposed in real life. So I was a teaching artist at Groundswell. I did a lot of murals in the community. And I also sort of flexed my filmmaking skills, which is something that I think also was attractive to the committee as a film teacher as well. And so I had that time outside of school really developing my portfolio, which I think had really helped me there. So when I got to Benin, I did a little bit of sort of like just assessing myself, trying to figure out where I would stay in terms of housing. My family has a home out there, but I didn't want to sort of cause any conflict of interest, so I ended up sort of renting out a space in in Akpapa, which isn't like too far from where everything is. I'm gonna share my screen now and use some visual cues to guide me through the experience that was so long ago, aka I think it ended in March last year, March, due to the virus. I'll get to that though. When I first heard that I got the grant, I went celebrating by buying a pair of Jordans. Like I only own 3 Jordans, and these are the colors of the country of Benin, and it's a little sort of write up that I do for it. By the way, this is my Instagram if you guys want to follow up and read this write up. I was just super excited about the experience. Since you're here, I'll show you what these Jordans look like now. I ended up using them while I was out there to ride the motorcycles, and they're all scuffed up and beat up. But I think it's like, it's like a skateboarder, and on all the marks that are on their board, it's worthwhile, right? These are some of the first images I took. By the way, I was a high school teacher, so you have all these comments here from my students and some of my mentors just showing love and support. These are images from like just the first moments out there in Benin. This guy, a lot of people on motorcycles. Oops, sorry. This guy wearing a Kurt Cobain's shirt on the back of his Zim. I wonder if you can, yeah. This was the ride into my living complex. So while I was there, I wanted to go visit the university, and literally for about a week and a half, I was like in a pretty remote-ish area in Benin. In a week and a half, I just kept having to deal with crazy things like typhoon-style rain that just like really muddied up the roads, so I wasn't able to get around as much. And then people just forgetting that they had made a commitment to pick me up. So I just thought that it would be worthwhile to invest in my own mode of transportation. So I went to purchase a motorcycle, probably like like 2 or 3 weeks out, which is like, as you'll see in a lot of these photos, probably one of the main modes of transportation out there. And the motorcycle also then allowed me to just go out there and scout and take images. I'm a painter. That's what I proposed doing there. I also proposed like collecting images from the landscape. So it was important for me to be able to transport myself and my tools to get that work done. And these are some more moments. It's going over a bridge. These are women making, with the baby on the back, fufu, which is one of my favorite dishes. I mean, I recognize it because my mom makes it at home, but I didn't know that this was like a communal thing as well. I was in a car here, and then you look into the distance. There's a kid like throwing, just like I don't know, he's stirring up a fire. Like, I think that's how they just sort of like dispose of trash. So that's what was going on there. Just like beautiful mundane moments like this really captivated me. These are people living in the neighborhood. This was the living complex that I was in. This is me. This is me, by the way, learning how to ride the motorcycle that I purchased. So,
wow.
And those were the first few moments. After I got a hold of learning how to ride the motorcycle, which is evidenced by this video here. I was then able to just travel a lot. I had a sort of family friend with me as a guide. And again, I'm lucky because, I have some family in Benin, so I was able to sort of reach out to some people out there to help me just sort of like know where to go to find certain things. And so we traveled a lot to a lot of places and took a lot of photos to places like school. You'll see later in this video that we ended up like in a school zone. And ended up taking pictures of like just the local community. Um, uh, to build my practice, I needed certain tools. I wasn't able to bring my easel or canvas like with the frames and whatnot. I did bring a roll of canvas with some paints, which I thought would be a problem because, you know, oil paints, but it ended up working out somehow. So I found a local carpenter who helped me build some frames in the neighborhood, and that's what we're doing here. These are the homies, the guys that really just help me out on the daily in terms of knowing where to go and what to do. Because like transportation before I had bought the motorcycle was really like, is it really a mission out there? My mom like reached out to a family friend to basically be my chauffeur for a good amount of time. I was like, Mom, like this is my program. Can I be the boss here, please? Like I don't think I need it. And when they found out that I wanted to buy a motorcycle, it was a whole controversy in the family. And I was like, look, I'm here on a grant. I'm not here to, you know what I mean, discuss this. Like, I've got to make my choices and do what I have to do. I just thought this was hilarious. I took a photo of a guy with his huge dog, like half of his height. Anyway, let's zero back into the program, right? This was I like just like sort of being there and like learning about all of the holidays. This was a holiday where they celebrated just like the deities of the Dahomey Kingdom. And every other block you'd see like a group of kids just dancing. Can you guys hear the sound? So I spent a lot of time just like, you know, getting used to the rhythm of life out there. Like not a lot of time, maybe like the first 2 or 3 weeks once I landed, just sort of like building a practice, not practice, but like a ritual for myself. What would I do? Every day was a basketball court right outside from where I live, so you know I would like play basketball with the kids in the community. All the while in the daytime, I would reach out to, I would travel to the university to try to connect with the professors that I'd been emailing with to see about what we could do, maybe to go to some institutions. And I'll go over to the folder that I cooked up called Presentation to maybe sort of hone in on some of those images. One of the first things that I did when I was out there, I flew my drone and got an image that I would then work into a self-portrait. As one of the first pieces that I started. Again, some images that I was really inspired by were these sort of vases that they contain gas in for their motorcycles. So again, I just went out there and just took a lot of pictures, just a lot of pictures to sample from my experience. I'm trying to find the images. I organized them by date of the university. When they found out that I was coming, they put together a sort of school presentation where they had their students, their art students, present artwork, which was really amazing. Oh, I thought I did this already. Sorry, guys. It would be in the presentation photo, wouldn't it? Oy, oy, oy. Ah, okay. Here's some images from there. Okay. Well, okay. I'll fast forward. Well, just to tell you what happened with the university. They had a beautiful ceremony where they presented me with some of their artwork, and the professor who I was speaking with via email connected me with one of his peers that then just sort of like I don't know, how do I say this? He, when I sort of went back to him a few times asking about what the plan was to sort of go to these historical institutions, he was like, sure, just come to a few classes. which was great for me because that's what I had written in my proposal anyway, that I would be taking classes there. But when I got to the classes, he would be there, lecture for like 5 minutes, and then disappear. And I would like look to his like sort of like student teaching assistant and be like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, he'll be back. 20, 30 minutes go by. And so I called him. I was like, hey, I'm in class. Like, where are you? He's like, oh, I'm in the hospital with my sister. Could you send money to help? And I was like, okay, plan B. Let's figure out what we're going to do. Like, I'm here to do a research grant, right? This is happening. This is one of the best programs out there, by the way. Like Fulbright, it gives you a lot of freedom because things like this do happen, right? You need to be able to figure out what to do. So I reached out to like my family that was there to figure out what were those institutions that I needed to go out to. And then I reached out to the main person that I was in communication with just to tell him that I think we need a different plan here. And then he put me in touch with someone else, and we ended up going to Foundation Dinsu. And at Foundation Dinsu, they were having a show on the wax fabrics that you see in a lot of these images. We ended up going on a field trip to the wax museum. And I was so lucky because as soon as I changed my plan, it turned out that this show was only on view, like it was on view for several months, but the day that I sort of landed the opportunity was the last day that they had this sort of series that looked at the fabrics in Benin as far back as the Dahomey Kingdom, right? So this was a queen out there, and they had this sort of school kids at the show.
Well, and that just, Ashton, that just like speaks to how these projects shift, that you have a plan and you write a proposal for a plan because that's what you have to do. But then once you get there, you have to shift and be flexible and see what's going to come up and make the most of what's really happening there on the ground.
Yeah, and again, my key points were that I wanted to make history paintings. I possibly also wanted to do murals, right, with an institution. And the first few months would have been research, which essentially still was what I was able to do, right? There's a folder called WIDA where I traveled with some family friends to the sort of cultural capital of Benin, and was able to sort of visit a lot of historical places as well. This is like one of their mythical forests that houses a lot of the deities that are important. The Rayum Wida Oweda is what it sort of was used to be called. It got translated to Wida. How are we doing on time, by the way?
Yeah. Well, we have, when questions come up too, we'll hear more about it, but maybe, yeah, we should switch over to hear from Yang and.
Oh, well, I'll wrap it up just to let you guys know how it ended.
Yeah.
So I did all of that, and right when I was ready to start getting my ducks into row, which, by the way, in February, I had gotten in touch with some folks who work at the embassy and sort of helped me, because all throughout that I was still doing watercolors of what I was seeing in my neighborhood, like around me. They were not kind enough to open up their home for like a small exhibition out there, right? Where like people from the embassy, people from other programs came around and saw the work that I'd been working on. And through this experience, I got in touch with a prince out there who was related to the distant king of Benin. And we were scheduled to go to Agbome, which is like the capital of Benin, where we would see his family, which like very few people have access to. And the night before the trip, I tested all my equipment as one should, and my camera was not working. But because I was in Benin and I wasn't really following the news that well regarding COVID, I decided that I would fly back to America for a few days to repair the camera and to come back after doing a lot of research and seeing that no place in sub-Saharan Africa had the right sort of like camera repair shop for the camera that I had. And when I got there, COVID sort of solidified into what it was. and I was stranded, and the program sort of ended abruptly, right when I was starting to get to the point where I could do the historical research that I needed to collect the images that I needed to. People at this event also offered me opportunities to collaborate with local schools for murals and such. But all said and done, I still have their contacts, which I think is one of the biggest experiences that I got from this Fulbright for me. And I'm a high school teacher, so during my summers, I'll probably be able to fly back and see if I can get things kickstarted again. All right. Sorry that I was sort of discombobulated. If you guys add me on Instagram, you can see a little bit of a narrative coming together in all of these photos. This is at least one of the history paintings that I was able to work on. Right? Okay. All right. I'm done. Sorry.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's great. And we want to just hear from you. So that's awesome. Yeah, and I think, COVID changed everything. So for a lot of people, so it was really weird and strange. And I think there was a question too about what COVID did and has done. And I'll just quickly that year was really cut off. Although Ying has a little bit of a different story that happened there. But everything else has been going on as kind of normal. In fact, we have our 2 Fulbrighters to South Korea just left a couple weeks ago, and one of them's leaving to Taiwan in a couple weeks, and the next cycle is happening. So, okay, so let's hear from you.
Right. Thank you so much, Ashton, for sharing that awesome experience, especially all of those really intimate photos. I think that's really important to emphasize, is that connection to the community and day-to-day life that you experience. So hey everyone, I'm Ying. Just to preface myself, my Fulbright was to South Korea, but I myself am not of Korean descent, and I hold U.S. citizenship, as one has to in order to apply for the U.S. I believe there was a question of someone who lived in the Philippines for a long time. It doesn't matter how long you've lived in the country for, actually. I know Lisa said that the Fulbright prefers people who don't have too much experience in the country, but someone from my cohort in South Korea had gone back to visit her family every year, and she still received the grant. So I think it might vary by country in that case, but you do have to be a U.S. citizen. So yes, I am not of South Korean descent. I hold a U.S. passport, and going into my Fulbright grant was just very hyper aware of my identity as a US citizen, particularly considering the US military presence in South Korea that still goes on there, as well as the tumultuous history that the US has inflicted on the country. To back up a bit though, this is some of my work at RISD. I wanted to share some of the pieces in my portfolio and prepping for going to South Korea. So I, as Lisa mentioned, applied twice. The first year was the summer before my senior year, so submitted senior year fall. And these were pieces from junior year that I had done that were referencing hanbok, traditional Korean clothing that I did over an independent study winter session with Jonghwa Park. If anyone knows her, she's an incredible professor teaching machine knitting and apparel and textiles. But she really helped guide me through traditional Korean costume. And initially, the winter session was supposed to be focusing on all of East Asia, as my brown major was in East Asian studies. But I'm sort of, as most RISD students get time crunched, I didn't get to the other 2 countries. And so I ended up focusing solely on South Korea, and that's where this interest really sparked. And so I applied my senior year, passed the first round, as did wonderfully 10 of the current applicants. And then I was rejected in April, and I cried for like a whole week and didn't get out of bed. But then the second time around, Lisa was really great and held my hand and picked me back up, encouraged me to apply again. And I felt as though my next round application was much stronger because of the senior year work I was able to include for my thesis. That was about the relationship between diaspora East Asian daughters specifically and their mothers, and this whole idea that we dream in a different language than our mothers do, and the relationship that stems from that. So those were some of the pieces I included. I chose South Korea because, as I had mentioned, junior winter session, that's when I really delve into hanbok, traditional Korean clothing, but also because compared to the Japanese kimono and also Chinese hanfu, South Korean hanbok was relatively unknown and uncarried by US museums at that time. I think it's gaining more recognition now as the Hallyu or K-wave expands Korean culture across the US and the world, which is its own other sort of research topic to explore. My affiliates were the Ewha Women's University and the Hanbok Advancement Center. I found these affiliates because for Ewha Women's University, I was in the RISD library and I was looking for a book on Humbug, and then a book that was like jutting out hit me, and I like picked it up and flipped to the back page, and it had the author's email addresses on the end, and one of the authors was a professor at Ewha Women's University. So I just shot her. Well, I shot all the authors an email, and she was the only one who responded. And so that's how I found Professor Hong from Ewha Women's University. I sat in with some of her graduate students on Humbug history classes as well as traditional sewing classes. And then my second affiliate, Humbug Advancement Center, I found while I was living in New York City, interning that summer. I just Googled Humbug events, New York City, and stumbled upon a FIT professor who ended up having a contact at the Humbug Advancement Center. So as Lisa said, it's really good to start early because a lot of the times your first contact point won't be your actual affiliate, but they might get you to who your eventual affiliate will be. In terms of some of the research I did, I didn't say my research topic. My research topic was exploring how Humbug was being preserved, stored, and innovated in South Korea. I was interested in, especially considering the modernization, some use the term westernization, of South Korea in recent years due to US influence, how they were preserving their traditional culture, and if young designers our age were turning traditional culture into something more forward. And so part of the research was going to museums such as the National Folk Museum and National Palace Museum to look at actual artifacts, read those plaques, understand the symbolisms and color dyeing of traditional Korean clothing. And then the second part was speaking to actual designers who were innovating Korean clothing. And at first I remember feeling really conflicted about these new designs because I was like, oh, are you just adding like a Western armhole? Are you just using a zipper closure? Like in a way, are you actually just adding more Western elements? But this designer, Hwang Yi-sol, who's considered one of the pioneers of contemporary Hanbok, said something that really stuck out to me, which to her, it wasn't about westernizing, but more desirable for people today to wear. And she tries to think, what if Hanbok was simpler so more people would wear it on the train or on the bus or just in daily life? Like if we could make Hanbok something more applicable to our current times, we can't assume that Hanbok wouldn't have evolved if it weren't for the infiltration of Western clothing. We need to imagine the potential of what it could have become. Conversely, though, I also spoke with the cultural master of traditional Korean sewing, Kim Son, and cultural master Koo Hae-ja was really adamant about keeping Hanbok as is. She believed that the traditional sort of straight armhole, the traditional wing-like shape of the jackets held such an important spirit to Korean traditional culture that altering it in any way was sacrificing the traditional spirit of the country. In terms of some of the classes and workshops that I took, I learned traditional Korean sewing at Ewha Women's University, as I mentioned. I reached out through the directory that Lisa had shared with everyone, I reached out to former Korean American artists who had received the grant for Hanji, traditional Korean paper, and she introduced me to this incredible Pojagi professor who taught me traditional Korean quilting. I learned traditional Korean knotting to create these norige, which are like pendants that were often worn as decorative accents to Hanbok. And then I also learned traditional Korean dyeing. So this is safflower dye, and you can see the flower itself is quite orange. So it's a very intensive process where you soak the flowers and have to rinse out the yellow from the orange in order to produce a really deep red color. These were just some of the sketchbook notes that I took from museum visits, as well as later sketchbook collages as I was trying to work out my final collection. I ended up not making a final collection. In my proposal, I was like, I'm gonna make a collection of 8 pieces and I'm gonna have an exhibition. And none of that happened, not because of COVID, but actually because, as I said, going in, I was hyper with my identity. And even within the first 2 months, I was like, wow, there's so much here to learn. Like 10 months isn't enough alone just to do all the research. How can I research as much as possible and just make sure I'm being as respectful and as understanding as possible before I jump into creating this like flamboyant collection. I'm also not that great of an artist, so thank God I spent more time doing research than actual making stuff. Anyways, so here in the kitchen, I'm dyeing, use some of the traditional dyeing skills I used to dye chrysanthemum flower, gukwa. which translates to national flower in Korea, to turn this yellow color. And the final garment I made was in collaboration with 2 Korean diaspora friends who became really, really close partners to me during my time there. And so we chose the color yellow to symbolize resilience from the Sewol ferry incident to the Hong Kong umbrella movement. We thought yellow was the most gentle as well as the most powerful color. And so the piece itself takes elements of hanbok, from the straight armhole to using tie closures only, to the overlapping hem. And then the pants are actually based off, oh, can you see that? I can't go back, but in the small corner, you can see the traditional Korean women's underdrawers that were used to model the pants patterns. Oh, and it could be worn in multiple ways. Here you see the pants being worn at the waist with the jacket over it. And then here the pants are worn sort of more like a jumper over the jacket. And the whole concept here was in dialogue with these 2 Korean diaspora friends about how identity is something that, even though it differs by person, is a uniform that you're constantly having to wear. And so one of the key points was this little hidden pocket at the nape of the neck where I wanted the wearer to hold something precious to them. So here my friend Grace inserted a little photo of her and some of her close friends from the States. And another big takeaway I had from observing hanbok was the amount of movement, that the volume of the garments allowed for. And so we took a bunch of photos of Yeowon doing taekwondo kicks and really appreciated the way that showcased the movement that might not have come out had the patterns been just static. And oh, these are just general photos, but as Ashton had mentioned, the Fulbright isn't just about, or I found that my Fulbright wasn't just about me making this art project. It was about me understanding another culture, diving into a different country and trying to make new friends there. And I found myself at times when I was sewing in studio and thinking like, I gotta make 8 garments. I'm like, why am I doing this? I could be sewing in like New York City. I could be sewing in my home in Michigan, but only here can I visit like the Haeundae Temple in Busan. Only here can I visit this like indie bookstore in Seoul, which may sound selfish, but really so much of the exploration and trying to understand the spirit of the country I was in, I think gave me the resources I have now as an artist back in the States to continue my practice going forward, even if I didn't make as many things while I was in Korea. Oh, here's my email in case anyone had any further questions, because I didn't want to take up too much of your time. Oh, I did want to say really quick, because I was, as Lisa mentioned, a Brown student, a large part of my research wasn't just making art. I also created this website to talk about all of the resources I learned, because I really wanted to make this history and sort of information available for people, I guess, who speak English. So that's the one limitation. But in case anyone is interested in hanbok, please feel free to visit this website and learn more. Okay. Lisa, you're on mute. Okay.
I know, and it won't.
Say something.
You're good now.
It's working. It's working. Just don't touch
Okay.
anything.
Wow. Oh, maybe I think I still see your mute button or something. Okay. So good. Yeah, I see your mute button. And okay. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. You know, and I think what's really interesting about hearing from both of you and both of your projects is, you know, Fulbright, your projects and the things that you're writing your proposal are really just a meaningful way for you to explore the country. I mean, if they could just send you over there and say, hey, talk to people, hang out, they probably would, but they can't, because they have to, you know, they have what, 12,000 applications. They've got to figure out how to make decisions. So you develop these projects and so that you have meaningful exchange. But really, this is about just getting there and seeing what happens in day-to-day life. And, you know, the pictures we've seen of Ashton, just of just life there, and how both of your projects shifted and moved, and just how Ying just kind of came to the realization that I don't want to just sew. I want to be here. And so all those things are really important. Of course, you still have to write an application, have a proposal, and have an outline, and have a what, and tell us what you're going to do, and so what, and why, and all that. But but in the end, it's about this.
It's fantastic. If I can chime in, I know that there's a few questions, and maybe we can work some of those in if it's a good time for you, Lisa.
Yeah, let's do some questions.
Okay,
and, yeah,
because that was really
so much.
fun. Both of you, thank you so much. Truly, some of those moments were, I mean, I'm sure I was just grinning so large. So thank you for that, those minutes. So you both spoke about a little bit about, you know, how you found your affiliations, and that is one question Mark is asking about, finding affiliations and how do you properly arrange that. But also a more nuanced part of that question, Mark is asking, what is the expectation of that affiliation? Like, how can you explain to a potential person that might help you what this is, and like, what do you expect from them?
I can go first really quick. So I think the short answer is that it varies by project, and is as much support as you think that you'll need. I would say that it's better to have, or in my experience, I'm thankful I had 2 affiliates, because actually my professor at UL Women's University wasn't able to help me as much. I didn't get studio space at UL. I was able to sit in on classes, but I didn't get my own studio space, which I remember was a question. I ended up having a big enough apartment though to have my own sewing. I bought a sewing machine. Certain countries will give you a supply stipend. So I received a separate stipend just to buy a sewing machine, buy my fabrics, take classes. I had to pay for lessons. So, and my second affiliate, the Humboldt Advancement Center, my relationship with them was more just like a touch point for like, I'd get lunch with the director sort of once a month throughout the first 8 months of the grant. And just talk about how my project was going, someone to bounce ideas off of. I would say neither of my affiliates were direct teachers or mentors. I went to teacher specific or mentor specific people who I had to pay for that information later. But one of my friends, Christine, who's in South Korea right now, is working as sort of an apprentice under a practicing artist, a professional artist in South Korea. So yeah, it just varies by person.
Yeah, just to second that, it definitely does vary by person. My intention was to sort of use the institution, the affiliation, as like sort of a starting off point for the research, which it was, you know, past the initial drama. You know what I mean? Like I was able to sort of connect with a few people who would sort of like let me know when there were cultural sort of field trips happening with the students and such. But beyond that, you can definitely tap into your own resources. I think one of the most important experiences past sort of the point of internship and actually getting the Fulbright was the orientation that happened, I think for us in like sort of Illinois somewhere. But I was able to meet previous Fulbrighters, and there's a resource for you to do that now, even in the initial stage, right? Like Lisa's video pointed out that there's a section where you can sort of get a directory to previous Fulbrighters. I would definitely recommend doing that. Even while I was applying, I was able to reach out to some folks who had been in and ask them certain questions. And one of those people happened to have been at the orientation, and she connected me with somebody who had a farm up in the north of the country, and I got some beautiful drone shots of the farm as well. So it's like, yeah, like the affiliation is just like almost a confirmation to them, in my opinion, that you have the backing of an institution in case you do get just lost out there, right? You know, in terms of finding the right institutions and such. Yeah.
That's
And I'll
super
just add
helpful. I appreciate the spectrum that's covered there, because it sounds like it's a lot of things, you know, and really to both your points, you know, it depends on like your individual experience. Everybody's going to have a different experience wherever they are in the world. So it really could be this full spectrum. And please, Lisa, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Okay. Every answer to Fulbright is it depends. So we should just start every answer with, well, it depends. because it depends on you and your project and your ideas. And then every country is really different. Every country's requirements, there's the basic requirements, but there's a lot of nuances and things once you start diving into that. So what you hear from someone else in another country might not be the same, and then things change over time too. So every answer is, it depends, and you just kind of work through that.
Oh wait,
Fantastic.
really quick,
Thank
sorry.
you. Please.
Word of advice, if anyone's totally lost, I would recommend looking up major universities in the country that you're interested in, going to their art departments on their websites and emailing those professors first.
Yeah, and I'll back that too. I think, a lot of countries will say it has to be higher education. That's it. You have to affiliate. Your primary affiliation has to be higher education. Some other countries are more open, but it tends to happen in higher education because that's where they know what Fulbright is. And most universities, most professors know what Fulbright is. So it's a good way to start, even if it doesn't end up being your first affiliate. It's just a good way to start because people understand what it is.
By the way, I was living at a place, I was living in this neighborhood, and I was playing basketball one day wearing my Fulbright t-shirt, and this older guy came up to me and was like, "You're a Fulbrighter?" I was like, "Yeah." He lived in the neighborhood, and he was a Fulbrighter from Benin who had come to America. And so that was like another sort of opportunity to make a connection with someone out there. And just wear your t-shirt when you guys get it out there. Wear your t-shirt.
That's so good. Truly. Thank you for sharing that. So there's just a couple more questions, and speaking, Ashton, about your neighborhood and where you were staying. So Mark is asking also, can you tell us more about housing and studios? And certainly Ashton and Ying, if you could speak to how you came upon the spaces you occupied while you were there.
Yeah, in my situation, I was fortunate enough to have a lot of family out there. I was nervous about deciding to stay at a family's residence because of what I felt were their expectations from Fulbright. So I ended up finding a rental, which was essentially I was paying my mom for some space that she had out there. But I just wanted to be able to pay for that space. That said, the connections that I made out there were able to sort of put me in. First of all, even before all of that, at the orientation, you're speaking to a lot of people who have done it already. So they were able to sort of give you some feedback and insight. IIE was also able to provide you with a lot of sort of resources about how to get that process started in terms of whatever relative country you're in. So during the orientation, they'll give you even more targeted information in terms of housing and all the sort of logistical things that are relevant to your country. But then once I got out there, I joined a bunch of expat Facebook groups, and to this day, I was just yesterday looking at a really great space that was super cheap for rent, in Benin. I was like, damn, I don't know, I shouldn't have never left. I should have extended my stay. I don't know. But yeah, it's that housing will not be a problem after you sort of focus on the application. You'll figure it out easy.
Yeah, to second that, South Korea actually provides housing for its applicants. I know some countries have either office dormitories or dormitories at schools, but again, like Lisa said, varies by country. To Ashton's point, I first was living in my own housing and then moved into Fulbright housing, but when I found my own studio, it was also through a Facebook group. If you just look up whatever city you're gonna be in and housing, if Facebook is legal in that country, I know it's not in China, but yeah, that's where I would start with housing. And if they don't provide housing, I believe the housing stipend is quite generous for most of the applicants to Taiwan and South Korea that I've heard from. So you'll be able to live quite comfortably.
Yeah, yeah, they do. And it's also something you do not need to know in your application. You apply in the fall and you've got almost a year, and some people even more before you go. So you don't even have to address that in your application. Like Ashton said, and you'll just figure it out. So just don't worry about that. The only thing about studio space is if you need something for your work, you need studio space, you need equipment, you need something, you will have to address that, and so that they know what you need to do your work there. And you want to kind of think, as you're thinking ahead, how can you limit what your needs are once you get there? Because you just don't know what's going to happen. So if you're proposing that you're going to make gigantic pieces or something like that, you might want to scale it back for your year abroad. just because that's going to be a question of feasibility, and you're going to need to address how you're going to do that.
Yeah, and can we expand that thought just one? Because Ashton, you had mentioned bringing some materials with you. Did you know ahead of time that you were going to have trouble getting some materials while you were there? Is that why you brought some of the things, or did you just,
I did. Yeah.
these are my things and I always bring them?
Yeah, no, I did. I figured it would be hard to find oil paints out there, so I just made sure that I had some with me. I did the research to figure out whether it was okay to bring oil paints, because like a lot of stuff is like toxic and whatnot. And I don't know why, but I felt like the research told me that it wasn't okay, but I still did it, and it worked out. That said, I did all that. I got even like raw canvas, and I don't know, I bought the gesso and I forgot to pack it. So I spent maybe like 2 or 3 weeks driving around finding a way to concoct gesso from scratch, which we were successful in doing. Like we got all the ingredients together and just made homemade gesso.
I love hearing this. It's great. So, it sounds like making do and like responding, being able to respond in the world is a skill that you're going to need out there.
Yeah. If you're not good at planning, like
I think
and Ying, did you have anything to add? Please.
Yeah, this is a question that'd be better to ask your affiliate than to ask us, because your affiliate will know what resources are easier to find in that country, or what resources the school can provide to you versus what you'll have to bring.
Mm-hmm. Cool, thank you.
And mistakes are part of the fun. I mean, that's, you are going to make mistakes. There's no way you can plan for everything. So, and Fulbright knows that. They might even see that when they're reading that and go, they don't know about this yet. But that's part of this whole process, is that you got to learn and make your own mistakes. So it's about flexibility and adaptability.
Yeah, and the whole component of cultural exchange, that is the foundation of the Fulbright. So, just, being able to meet people and navigate spaces with the humans that live there, that's got to be a huge part of it. So there are 2 more questions, if I can keep you all on for just a few more minutes. So I don't know if Lisa, you want to dig into this. So how is COVID and travel restrictions affecting the current Fulbright process?
So you all, if you're applying this year, you'll be applying in the fall of 2021. You won't start your grants until either fall 2022 or winter 2023. And if the world isn't a little bit better fixed by then we got other problems, and what are we going to do? So I think, yeah, this is a long time from now. So in a way, that's good. So things should be back to normal then. We're all going to be hopeful that things are back to normal then. So I don't think you really need to worry about it. And we are going ahead. The 2 just left for their experiences. So those are happening, and the 10 semifinalists are all waiting. Nothing has been canceled. They're being reviewed. So those should be a go for the fall, or they might be delayed to the winter, but all, vaccines looking good.
Thank you, Lisa. And Ying, you had already, so last question, and then just so everybody knows, I'm going to share a few links that were part of Lisa's presentation. So I'll just share those through the chat in just a minute. But last question, and so I'm going to alter this question a tiny bit. The question is, does applying and not receiving the grant hurt a future second try? And Ying, if you want to expand your thoughts around that. And then Ashton, if you could speak to the way you got started, but then you were inspired to start again, and you were inspired to start again, like, because that's part of, maybe you didn't get all the way there, but like what got you back in the ring? If we could have those, maybe we'll end on those things.
I don't think it hurts to try a second time. I know friends who've tried second and third times and gotten it on their third tries, because ultimately it's not just about the quality of your application, it's a numbers game. Like when Lisa was showing you the number of applicants each country accepts, if South Korea accepts 14 independent research grantees and they want to have a diverse pool of artists, or people studying science, or people studying North Korean refugee issues, or people studying politics or economics, and I'm studying Hanbok and someone else is studying traditional Korean painting, then maybe those two are at conflict, and the person who has, I mean, her or their application was probably still better at the end of the day, but it's a numbers game. Also, I think my application was so much stronger the second time around because, as I had shown, I had my senior thesis work to back it up. My writing was also much more refined. The main difference was I really emphasized why my research on Hanbok was important for Korea, not just for myself, like why this was significant to the country as a whole and not just a personal goal. And I don't regret applying the first time and not receiving it because I had done so much work that made the second application much more smooth. And also it's just good to get knocked down at times in life because it makes when you get things all the much sweeter.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ashton, please.
Speaking to my several attempts, the first, I guess, sort of more inquiry was towards the end of my senior year at RISD, where I was questioning the idea of a Fulbright, and I sort of did a little bit of research and really was strongly considering it. Up until right when I graduated, I got a sort of gig working on a film set that I don't regret. Like I got to meet Daniel Radcliffe through that experience and sold him a painting, which was fun. But it's sort of like I just lost sight of the Fulbright at that point, and I got a bunch of odd jobs working on set, working for several artists, and then working at Groundswell where I was a mural artist for a while, and that's when I started revisited this idea of doing a Fulbright again, and started in the application process, but just didn't feel confident in my portfolio still. I'd just gotten a job at Groundswell, so I hadn't really led any projects there. And I liked my paintings and whatnot, but none of them really sort of got at. I was really a film major at RISD. None of the paintings that I'd done before really got at what I was talking about in terms of what I wanted to propose. So I just sort of, I think I reached out to Lisa maybe in the third quarter of the application process, and I was like, I don't think this is gonna make any much. I don't. If I get this, I don't think I'd be deserving of it. You know what I mean? So I knew I needed to sort of retreat and come back when the time was right. And then shortly after the elections, I just felt an urge to really tackle this vision, and I'm just so lucky that it ended up working out the last time around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And I love that it kept just, I don't know, it sounds like it just stayed with you in the back of your brain. And when you finally had the inspiration, fully, it comes down to maybe it's a painting, maybe it's a moment, that kept you going.
Right.
But, it sounds like it just never left you that whole time.
It didn't, and I'm lucky because when it did come back, I realized that I was at the last sort of precious bit of time before I wouldn't be eligible for Fulbright.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
2014, I think it's 3 years out, right? So I'm just lucky that I really decided to strike when I did. Yeah.
Cool. Well, congratulations to both of you. And please,
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, but I'm going to share these links, and then, I'll get out of the mix here.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a process from the beginning, the thoughts developing to the application to the wait. I mean, you just really learn a lot about yourself and your work through this process. And you have to sort of do Fulbright with all the passion and energy that you can muster, but at the same time, you have to know that this is going to be good for other things in your life too. And so if you don't get it, it's still a great experience and it's great learning. It's going to change you. It's going to churn up all kinds of things. So it's always a good thing. There's nothing, good things come out of it no matter what happens. And obviously if you get it, even better. But it's a great experience. And again, it depends as for everything. It's for your process and how long you need and when you do it and who your affiliate is and it depends is going to be the answer. This is such a unique experience. So thank you, Ashton. Thank you, Ying. Thank you, Alan, so much. So nice seeing you and reconnecting with you guys again. And it's been great through your application process, your experiences, just getting to know you. Thank you all for participating and joining us. And the video you'll find on our website, and this recording of this event you'll find on our website. So take care, everybody, and do reach out for support. We're here. We're happy to help.